Right, let's get some reaction to the proposed amendments. We're now joined by Black Business Council CEO Kganki Matabane. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Are the amendments all good news for business? What's your reaction?
Good evening, Paul, and the viewers, and thank you very much for having us. The amendments are a step in the right direction. Remember, when the PPPs, as they are called, came into place in 1998, the intention and the projections was that by now we should have a lot of projects that are public-private partnerships. But so far we only have around 34 projects that have been registered, which tells you with the kind of challenges that South Africa has, we were not necessarily doing that much better. So the regulations in the main are trying to deal with two issues. The first one, I think, has been mentioned already, is around the feasibility study costs. Because if you spend all your money trying to prepare and you don't win, then it means that money is lost. So a lot of private sector players will rather say, I am not going to get involved, because if you try and get involved and you don't win, those costs then are basically lost forever. The second part is to deal with the procurement, because there has been a lot of uncertainty, because sometimes you go all the way, the accounting officers, or what they call the CEOs, they decide to cancel the procurement processes, and then that's it. So now the regulations are going to try to ensure that there's no cancellation of good projects, so that they can give security to investors.
How do you believe that the regulations will encourage private sector participation?
They will, because then private sector players will be able to start this feasibility studies, spend the money, but at least they know they'll recover the money if they don't win. So it's a win-win situation. But also, there is now going to be a process for unsolicited bids. So there hasn't been that process of unsolicited bid. That means you have to wait for the government to say there's a need here. In province A or in department A, there's a need, so then you can come. But when there are unsolicited bids, if you see a need somewhere, let's say you see that in the Eastern Cape, there's a need for a hospital, or there's a need for schools, or a need for roads, you can then go to government and say, I'm proposing this public-private partnership as an unsolicited bid, and government then will have a process of considering it, because at the moment it is very difficult to consider that type of a proposal. So that on its own will try and encourage a lot of players, private sector players, to come on board.
Do you think that these amendments will simplify the process of the procurement of public-private partnership projects?
Yes, I think they will, coming from where we are now. They will simplify it. But again, like any other thing in the world, the biggest issue is implementation. Will this regulations, after being passed, will they be implemented in such a way that the private sector will behave, or will they be implemented with the agents that is needed? Because, as you know, a lot of our infrastructure is basically coming to the end of life. You just see, when you're driving around, you see all the roads when you get into small towns that the roads are not drivable. So those are the examples of where the public and private sector can collaborate. But again, I think I need to emphasize this point, that implementation. So we hope there will be that agency in implementing.
Yes, and that's quite an important point that you emphasize, because it's all well and good to have policy on paper, but fail to implement it so that it does affect the business world and have a ripple effect insofar as making processes easier and, of course, more attractive for business people.
Yes, definitely, because also if the local private sector feels like things are taking forever, it becomes even difficult to attract foreign direct investment, because they may be partnering with local partners who are then going to say, but we are struggling with the regulations, we are struggling with the policy environment. So it's very important that the policy environment is welcoming. But again, let's make sure that we implement what we put on paper.
Very well. Thank you so much for weighing in on this discussion. That reaction there by a Black Business Council CEO, Kganki Matabane, speaking there about all good to have policy on paper, but implementation will really be the defining factor. Speaking there about the welcoming of the amendments on the regulations that govern public-private partnerships. We leave that conversation there.